Welcome to Asian Chinese Philosophy and Life. In this channel, I will try to explain traditional Chinese wisdom in English and with the curiosity of a modern researcher. China is often described as a civilization with 5,000 years of history. But before we talk more about ideas like yin and yang, the I Ching, Tao, or Chinese medicine, we need a basic historical map because these ideas grew out of real historical conditions. So in this video, we will take a quick journey through the main Chinese dynasties and the historical periods. This background will help us understand why Chinese philosophy asks questions about change, balance, harmony, and the place of human beings between heaven and earth. In other words, history gives us the foundation from which Chinese philosophy developed. We start with Xia dynasty. The Xia is traditionally remembered as China's first dynasty, usually dated to around 2000 BC. However, from a modern historical point of view, the Xia is still difficult to define clearly because we do not yet have direct written records from the Xia itself. Archaeology gives us important clues, especially through sites such as the early Tao culture, which some scholars connect with the Xia. But the evidence is still not complete. So many scholars now think it is better to describe the Xia as the beginning of China's early dynasty memory rather than fully confirmed historical dynasty. The Shang dynasty is much clearer historically. One of the most important reasons is the discovery of oracle-born inscriptions, which give us direct evidence of writing, royal divination, agriculture, and ritual life. These oracle-born inscriptions are among the earliest known forms of Chinese writing, and many characters are connected to later Chinese characters. The Shang also left behind impressive bronze vessels showing that ritual, kinship, ancestor worship, and state power were already highly developed. Western Zhou created a political order in which the king granted land and authority to regional lords, so it can be loosely compared to a feudal-like system during the Middle Ages in Europe. One very important idea from the Zhou was the mandate of heaven. This idea suggested that a ruler had legitimacy only when he governed properly. If the ruler became cruel or lost moral authority, heaven could withdraw its mandate, and a new dynasty could replace the old one. After Western Zhou, it is called Eastern Zhou, which has two periods. During the spring and autumn period, the power of the Zhou king became weaker, and many regional states began to compete with each other. This was a time of political instability, but it was also a time when people started to think deeply about how society should be organized. The warring states period was even more intense. States fought constantly, but they also reformed their governments, armies, laws, and economy systems. Because competition was so strong, rulers needed new ideas, and thinkers tried to offer answers. This is why the 100 schools of thought appeared in this period. Confucianism, Taoism, Mohism, legalism, and yin-yang thought all developed in this broader intellectual environment. In other words, one of the most creative periods in Chinese philosophy came from deep political and social pressure. The Qing dynasty created the first unified imperial China. It standardized writing, weights, measures, currency, and the administrative systems, which helped turn many different states into one centralized empire. This highly centralized system was continuously adopted and adapted by later dynasties for more than 2,000 years. The Qing is also associated with the early linking and extension of northern frontier wars, which later became part of the Great Wall tradition. But the Qing ruled through very strict law, strong military control, and heavy labor demands. Because of this harsh system, the dynasty lasted only about 15 years, but its institutional impact was enormous. The Han Dynasty learned from both the success and failure of the Qing. It kept the idea of a unified empire and a strong bureaucracy, but it created a more durable political and cultural system. Many things flourished during the Han Dynasty, including clothing styles, written culture, poetry, and political institutions. Together, this helped create one of the first strong and unified cultural symbols of China, which is why the Han became so important for Chinese identity. Today, many Chinese people call themselves Han Chinese, and the Chinese language is also called Hanyu or Han language. During the Han, Confucianism gradually became the main ideology of the state, while Taoist ideas also remained influential in culture, cosmology, and ways of thinking about nature. After the Han collapsed, China entered a long period of division for more than 300 years. This started with the famous Three Kingdoms period, which later became one of the most popular sources of Chinese historical stories, military strategy, and heroic imagination. Then the Sui dynasty reunified China, but like the Qing, it was short-lived. Nevertheless, one of the Sui's most important long-term contributions was the development of the civil service examination system, which later became a central mechanism for selecting government officials until it ended in 1905. The town then built on this foundation and became one of the most powerful, open, and cosmopolitan empires in Chinese history. Town culture had a huge influence beyond China. Japan learned deeply from town institutions, writing, Buddhism, city planning, clothing, and art. Many town-style elements were later transformed and preserved within Japanese culture, and you can still see some of that influence today, especially in traditional architecture, Buddhist temples, and classical culture forms. The Song dynasty valued civil culture over military power. This emphasis shaped the Song's distinctive character, highly developed urban life, commerce, and scholar official culture. This was also the period when new Confucian thinkers reinterpreted Confucianism by combining ethics, cosmology, self-cultivation, and metaphysics. However, its relative neglect of military power made it weaker in dealing with strong northern regimes. As a result, although the Song was the major Chinese dynasty of this period, it did not control all the territory now associated with China. In the north and northwest, powerful regimes such as the Liao, Western Xia, and later the Zhu Qianjing ruled large areas and competed with the Song. The Yuan dynasty was established by the Mongols. For the first time, all of China was ruled within a much larger Mongol imperial world, which stretched across the vast part of Eurasia. This made China more directly connected to long-distance networks of trade, travel, technology, and cultural exchange. People, goods, and ideas moved more actively across Eurasia, including through the Silk Road and other overland routes. Marco Polo is often mentioned in Western accounts of this period, but Yuan history was much broader than European travel stories. The Ming dynasty restored Han Chinese rule after the Yuan and rebuilt a strong centralized imperial government. It was a period of major cultural achievement, with important developments in literature, painting, architecture, and maritime voyage. Also during this period, Wang Yangming developed the School of Mind, which became one of the most influential branches of later Confucian thoughts. It argued that moral understanding is not only about following external rules or studying classical texts, but also about cultivating the heart mind and realizing moral knowledge within oneself. The Qing dynasty was ruled by the Manchus and became China's last imperial dynasty. It greatly expanded territory of the empire and governed a very large, multi-ethnic state. However, in its later period, the Qing faced serious internal rebellions and increasing pressure from industrialized Western powers. This was not simply a story of China becoming weak. It was also a difficult encounter between an old imperial system and a rapidly changing modern world. The fall of the Qing in 1912 marked the end of more than 2,000 years of imperial rule. After the Qing, China entered the modern era with revolution, republic, war, reform, and nation building. If we look at this long history of China, one pattern appears again and again. China repeatedly moved between unity and division, order and disorder, centralization and collapse. This repeated historical experience is very important for understanding Chinese philosophy. It helps us explain why Chinese thinkers care so much about order, balance, harmony, proper relationships, and the connection between human society and the large nature order. In the next video, we will compare this Chinese historical path with European history. This comparison will help us see more clearly what makes Chinese philosophy distinctive and why ideas like the yin-yang and five faces became so important in Chinese ways of thinking. And thank you for watching this video.